This cover is the distilled myth of rainbow as it understood itself in India and beyond. The word rainbow arches across the top in thick, childlike letters filled with stars and gradients. Not corporate, not national, more like street paint or caravan paint, a declaration that this movement belongs to no flag. Below it, the planet is shown not as a political map, but as a living surface. A great flower is blooming out of the landmass like a heart or a chakra, with roots spreading back down into the continents and petals opening into the sky. Around the Earth, there are not borders or barbed wire, only a ring of human silhouettes hand in hand, equal scale, equal weight, long hair, skirts, drums, children, lovers, elders, no uniforms, just bodies in a shared circuit. Wrapped around them, a band of rainbow color becomes an atmosphere, a protective field, like the energy field the camp kept describing, awareness, respect, giving, consensus, drawn now as literal shielding around the world. The title, rising at the bottom, is hot, with yellows and pinks, not polite, almost sunburst, like something dawning rather than something already achieved. If you dream into it, the cover is not advertising, it's instructions. The flower is a world gathering taking root. The linked figures are the talking circle, scaled to planetary size. The rainbow ring is the vow to carry what happened in Haridwar outward, to Australia 2000, and wherever else the circle forms next. The message is simple and radical. The world is healed, not by authority, but by people who agree to hold hands around it and mean it. This page functions as a statement of intent for the publication itself. It declares that everything in it arises from collective consciousness, not from any single author, and that it belongs to Great Spirit rather than private ownership. The handwritten text wrapped around the lotus and rainbow drawing invites anyone to copy, reproduce, rewrite, draw on, color in, cut, paste, and distribute the material freely without permission, as long as it is done in the same spirit of openness and respect. It encourages the reader to sit, listen inwardly, and then begin by expressing themselves, framing creativity as something that rises from silence and moves outward in circles, just like the gatherings. The lotus is rooted in a patterned vessel labeled Feel Free, and the page is dated India, May 98, placing this manifesto in direct connection with the Rainbow family's time at the Kumbha Mela and presenting Rainbow Rising as not just a report, but a seed that anyone is invited to carry, reshape, and plant elsewhere. This page is the magazine's welcome statement, addressed like a greeting at the circle, welcome home, namaste, and an explanation of why the booklet exists. It says the magazine is a gift made of voices and song lines, gathered from around the world, meant to record both what the Rainbow family has dreamed in the past and what it is now trying to live. The text describes rainbow as something ancient, carved in stone at the beginning of time, but also unfolding in the present through action, circles, and shared love. It says that from a small seed the energy kept spiraling, the vision clarified, and people realized there is no real limit to what can be done together when the work is rooted in love. For many people, the rainbow camp at the Kumbha Mela in India felt like a full-circle moment, returning to a place that had inspired generations of seekers, gathering not only to receive, but to give back to Mother India, who is credited with having helped them grow, heal, and become who they are. This page frames the Kumbha Mela Rainbow Camp as both a spiritual encounter point and a turning point in rainbow history. It says that people from many walks of life came to the camp for darshan, heart-to-heart contact, and left with new seed, in the form of fresh vision, feelings, and a different way of relating. It reflects that every gathering has challenges, but what matters is how those difficulties are handled, and that some gatherings act as milestones that redirect a people's evolution. The writers present the Kumbha Mela camp as such a milestone, a catalyst that brought together brothers and sisters from more than 40 nationalities, confirmed the intention for a world rainbow gathering in Australia in the year 2000, and called everyone to become dream players, helping bring that vision into reality. The page then explains the purpose of the magazine itself, Rainbow Rising, to be a shared forum for visions, stories, and information across the globe, to strengthen communication, and to unite people in a common effort to restore harmony, unity, and balance with Mother Earth by gathering in circles. It ends with the idea that no one is dreaming alone. The dream is collective, and the goal is a world living as one. This page is the inner mythology of the Rainbow family made visible against open land and sky. In the first photograph, a wide circle of people stands barefoot on stony earth, hands lifted and linked, bodies mostly unmasked by clothing, facing outward toward the horizon rather than inward toward themselves. It looks like invocation, but it also looks like trust, a temporary tribe declaring itself present to the landscape, claiming nothing, building nothing permanent, just offering their joined shape to the place. The fact that some are wrapped in cloth and some are nearly naked speaks to Rainbow's core claim in India and elsewhere, that the body is not a commodity, not shame, not for sale, but an instrument of belonging to the earth. In the second photograph, a single figure stands alone at dusk, draped in translucent fabric, held wide like wings, silhouetted against a low horizon and a sky scattered with layered cloud. After the collective image of the first frame, this solitary figure reads almost like the spirit of that circle given one body, a reminder that rainbow runs on individual willingness, not orders, and that each person is both participant and vessel for whatever is being called in. Together, the two images show the emotional architecture of rainbow the way words never fully can. First we gather and lift our arms together, then each of us must stand for it when the light drops and the world is quiet. The mythic call page presents rainbow's purpose as a voluntary planetary mission in which certain people, described as beings of light from many places, agreed to incarnate on Earth during a time of crisis to help guide a shift from fear, domination, and separation toward unity, compassion, and mutual care. These people are told they will forget their origin, feel isolation and pain, and struggle inside human systems, but their task is to remember why they came and then act from that memory. The text says this work is in service of Gaia and involves changing culture not through authority or force, but through counsel, music, ritual, storytelling, shared food, open emotion, and public demonstrations of togetherness that model an alternative way of living. It frames rainbow warriors as participants in a coordinated effort to dissolve the old myths of control and guilt and to help midwife a collective transition into a state defined by love, cooperation, and responsibility to all life. This page weaves two origin stories of the rainbow to place the rainbow family inside a mythic lineage of survival, return, and covenant. At the top, within a coiled serpent, it retells an Aboriginal Australian teaching. Before colonization, some tribal shamans foresaw that the children of the tribe would be born with lighter and lighter skin over generations, eventually appearing white, and this vision caused fear because it seemed to predict disappearance. The page says some present-day elders interpret that vision differently. Even though most Aboriginal people were killed or displaced, the spirit will never die, because those spirits will reincarnate in the children of all peoples, black and white, so that the tribe rises again with many faces. It then links that to rainbow, suggesting rainbow can be understood as part of the re-emergence of destroyed tribes, not just in Australia but globally. Beneath that is a drawing of Noah's Ark and a handwritten biblical quote from Genesis, in which God promises after the flood that the rainbow will be the sign of an everlasting covenant between life on earth and the divine, a promise that there will not be total destruction again. Together, the Aboriginal prophecy and the Noah covenant frame the rainbow not just as a traveling camp, but as a spiritual sign that humanity is meant to survive, remember its responsibilities to land and each other, and carry forward the lives and cultures that were nearly erased. This page defines rainbow gatherings as a global, leaderless tradition that began in the counterculture of the 1960s, when people in the West became disillusioned with materialism and started seeking new, communal, nature-based ways of living. The first rainbow gathering took place in 1972 in the United States as an intentional experiment in peace, harmony, shared resources, and alternative culture outside mainstream systems, and the idea later spread across the Americas, Europe, Russia, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, India, and Israel. Rainbow gatherings are described as open invitations for anyone, from any background or belief system, to come together in nature to cook, sing, dance, learn, and practice mutual care as one family, without commerce, hierarchy, or formal institutions. The page states that after decades of practice, certain basic principles have emerged to protect the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of everyone present. The two foundational ones named here are respect of each other, meaning people are expected to treat one another as brothers and sisters and rise above ordinary social conflict in order to create unity through diversity, and respect of Mother Earth, meaning the camp commits to not polluting, not leaving trash, not cutting living trees, and not harming wildlife, acting as caretakers rather than consumers of the land. This page lays out core principles that define how a rainbow gathering is meant to function: environmental respect, collective voice, and non-commercial structure. It stresses that water is sacred and must not be polluted, so washing with soap, even biodegradable soap, should be done far from creeks or rivers. And drinking water sources are carefully protected because contamination can spread illness faster than anything else. It explains the talking stick, borrowed from Native American tradition, as a tool for equal communication. Whoever holds the stick speaks while everyone else listens without interruption, and the stick is passed so all voices are heard. The practice teaches patience, respect, and shared humanity. Decisions are made through consensus, meaning the circle talks until everyone can agree, even if that requires some people to set aside individual preferences for the good of the group. The page frames this as where the magic happens. Finally, it emphasizes that rainbow gatherings are fully non-commercial. There are no entry fees, no paid organizers, and no hired staff. Everything, from building kitchens to digging latrines to creating ceremonial spaces, exists only because people freely give their time, energy, and labor. The gathering works if everyone contributes their little bit, and when that happens, the page says, the Rainbow Tribe's shared effort becomes its power. This page sets out key principles of how a rainbow gathering is meant to function as a non-commercial, low-impact, communal space. Food is cooked and shared twice daily as vegetarian meals for everyone, like one large family, and instead of selling anything, a magic hat is passed so people can freely donate whatever they can. This pooled money covers basics like pots, tarps, and tools, proving that sharing creates abundance. The gathering is intentionally car-free. Vehicles are left at a distant car park and people walk or ferry in, both to protect safety, especially for children, and to preserve quiet, clean air and closeness to nature, rather than importing noise, traffic, and pollution into the camp. The gathering is also meant to be free of amplified electronics. Participants are asked not to bring electrical devices so the space can stay acoustic, simple, and focused on direct human presence rather than technology. Finally, the gathering is dog-free. Dogs can fight with each other, knock over food in communal circles, create hygiene problems by defecating where people eat on the ground, and chase wildlife. And they can endanger children, so people are asked to arrange care for their animals elsewhere in order to keep the camp safe and calm. This page outlines core guidelines and infrastructure of a rainbow gathering. It states that heavy drugs, including alcohol, are not allowed because they are believed to create aggression and disrupt group harmony. Only light drugs such as sugar, tea, coffee, and tobacco are accepted. Participants are expected to keep the site clean by using a communal rubbish recycling station for shared waste and individually packing out whatever they bring in. The text then describes standard features of a gathering: a welcome center at the entrance where new arrivals are greeted, oriented, and offered chai; an information center in the main area where workshops, activities, and announcements are posted; a communal kitchen that prepares shared meals and serves as a social work area for cooking and gathering firewood; and, if there are enough families, a children's area with games, creative activities, its own kitchen, and its own chai space. There are typically informal chai shops offering hot drinks, and there is a healing and first aid area staffed by experienced healers that supports everything from minor injuries to trauma. The heart of the gathering is the main fire and circle area, which is treated as sacred, kept clear of rubbish, and used for talking circles, ceremony, and serving meals. Meals are announced by blowing a conch shell and begin with people holding hands in a circle to give thanks. This page describes the structure and responsibilities of a rainbow gathering. Meals are served to everyone sitting calmly in large circles, and people are expected to wait rather than rush, to bring their own bowl, spoon, and cup, and to contribute voluntarily when the magic hat is passed to collect money for communal needs like food. After breakfast, the camp holds a daily talking circle where practical tasks, workshops, and calls for volunteers are announced, and then the discussion often opens into whatever people want to share. Near the end of the gathering, a vision council is held to speak openly about lessons learned, future intentions, timing of the next gatherings, and shared dreams. The page also explains the seed camp, which begins weeks before the official start and builds the infrastructure so the main gathering can function, and the cleanup camp, which stays afterward to dismantle temporary structures, remove trash, and leave the land better than it was found. The message is that the success of any rainbow gathering depends on shared effort, generosity, and respect for the place and each other, and it ends with an invitation to come together in love, music, joy, and collective energy so that the group can turn negativity into something bright and visible to the world. This page pairs a photograph of an Indian sadhu sitting in meditation with a long acrostic-style poem that spells out the rainbow ethos as a kind of ecstatic transmission. It describes rainbow as a roaming, renewing force that moves from the harsh and raw into healing, ritual, and shared vitality, calls on indigenous inspiration, and positions the speaker as a link between worlds and traditions, celebrates bodies, desire, wildness, damage, beauty, and rebirth, and frames the gathering as both earthly. The poem's language is dense, playful, and incantatory, jumping from Reiki to angels to butterflies to witches, insisting that all of it, brokenness, sensuality, ceremony, laughter, struggle, trance, and prayer, is part of the same blooming. The sadhu's calm presence beside it grounds that vision in India, suggesting that rainbow in the Kumbha Mela is not only outsiders seeking experience, but an encounter between wandering Western seekers and an older lineage of renunciation, devotion, and embodied spiritual authority. This page explains the mythic and spiritual origin of the Kumbha Mela and why it is considered the largest gathering on Earth. According to Hindu legend, gods and demons once churned the cosmic ocean to obtain a pot, kumbha, containing amrit, the nectar of immortality. A struggle followed, during which drops of the nectar fell to 4 places in India: Haridwar, Allahabad, Nasik, and Ujjain, sanctifying them forever. The Kumbha Mela is held in rotation at these sites about every 12 years, timed by specific planetary alignments, such as Jupiter entering Aquarius and the Sun entering Aries, which are believed to turn the Ganges into sacred nectar during certain days and draw millions of pilgrims who bathe to purify themselves. The page then tells an older story about the Ganges itself, saying that when the river first flowed from the Himalayas, she encountered holy rishis meditating near Rishikesh and Haridwar. Rather than disturb them, she split and flowed around them, creating 7 river islands that still exist. The rainbow gathering camp at the Haridwar Kumbha Mela was set up on one of these spiritually significant islands. This page introduces the Rainbow Family Giving Camp at the 1998 Kumbha Mela in Haridwar and explains why the group came to India with intention rather than tourism. It says India has long been a global spiritual center, inspiring movements of peace, meditation, yoga, and anti-materialism, and that millions of Western seekers have received teaching there. At the same time, it criticizes how many modern Western visitors now arrive mainly as consumers, with little respect for Indian customs, and frames Rainbow in India as an attempt to do the opposite, to give rather than take. The text traces this vision back to an earlier Kumbha Mela in 1995 at Devara Baba's ashram, where Rainbow held singing circles and a vision council about bringing rainbow consciousness to India in a way that involved mutual respect, cultural exchange, and real participation with local people. From that process, and from a later gathering of about 150 people in the Chamba region of the Himalaya at 3,000 meters, Rainbow members developed the plan to create an independent rainbow camp at the next Kumbha Mela in Haridwar in 1998. The result is described as the start of a conscious rainbow in India, a network of gatherings and retreats across places like Benares, the Himalaya, Orissa, and an environmental gathering in Almora, built on the principle that, by giving respect, we gain respect. This page explains how the Rainbow family created an independent giving camp at the Kumbha Mela for the first time, fulfilling a long-held wish to take part in the world's largest Hindu pilgrimage, not as followers of a guru, but as a self-organizing, leaderless community. After tensions with an ashram over authority and conduct, about 40 people relocated by bus to Rishikesh, scouted a site, and eventually established camp on a jungle island in the middle of the Ganges, where over 5 weeks, roughly 700 people from more than 40 countries joined. They organized themselves around daily talking circles after breakfast to share needs, resolve problems, and distribute responsibilities. Cooked together in a communal kitchen, gathered water from the dry riverbeds, and built the physical space of the camp so that energy flowed like yoga. The camp quickly became a point of interaction with Indian visitors from many social backgrounds who came for darshan, music, and free sacred food, prasad, and some locals even stayed to help with cooking, digging, pumping water, and cleaning, saying they were impressed by Westerners living without a guru and doing their own labor. The Rainbow Group's music and parades through the Mela, including fire performances and devotional-style singing, served as a cultural bridge. About half the songs being sung were bhajans, which made the gatherings feel familiar and spiritually meaningful to Indian pilgrims, and generated a sense of shared joy. This page describes the final phase of the Rainbow Camp at Kumbha Mela, moving from intense shared ritual into organizing for the future. It recalls how on the main bathing day, the group joined the official sadhu parade through Haridwar and ended in an Om circle in the Ganges, and how daily life in camp included workshops on yoga, percussion, meditation, acrobatics, fire twirling, and Reiki, plus music exchanges and shared feasts with neighboring camps and local visitors. A welcome center helped newcomers integrate for about 2 weeks, but when its energy faded and large numbers of new arrivals and Indian visitors kept coming, unresolved issues surfaced and had to be addressed later in full group circles. The narrative then returns to the full moon night, when about 250 participants stood together in a wide circle in the shallow flow of the Ganges, each holding a lit clay dish and offering prayers and intentions to the river for peace, harmony, and a return to the way of the heart. After that, the gathering held a vision council to openly share feelings, lessons, and concrete ideas about the future of rainbow in India and worldwide. Emerging visions included a rainbow retreat in Ganganani in northern India, a future rainbow gathering in Ladakh at the full moon of July, the launch of an international rainbow magazine called Rainbow Rising, made in 3 weeks, confirmation at an international circle that there will be a world rainbow gathering in Australia in 2000, a sense that different tribes from around the world could come together as one family, and a shared. After Vision Council, small circles refined these visions into plans, wrote an invitation for the Australia 2000 gathering, and asked for involvement from the broader rainbow family. In the final days, they cleaned camp, dismantled the kitchen and tents, collected leftover clothing, gear, and trash, and sorted it for reuse or recycling, closing not just an event but a cycle of learning, intention, and responsibility. This page closes with reflections on the rainbow camp at Kumbha Mela, describing it as a powerful but complicated experiment in living together across cultures, watched by thousands of Indians and experienced by Westerners as a break from normal travel culture. The writers say the gathering created a feeling of shared story, history, unity, joy, and rainbow giving, especially through music, dance, ritual, and public presence. But they also acknowledge tensions, misunderstandings, and conflicts, including discomfort around public affection, chillum smoking, outsiders disrespecting women, and emotional strain brought on by India's intensity. They emphasize that the difference this time was not pretending everything was fine but facing these issues directly as a circle, through communication, and seeing them as part of the rainbow colors, rather than something to hide. They describe the camp as part of a longer evolution toward rainbow in positive action, where gatherings take on a clear theme or intention, for example healing work, planting trees, or alternative communities, instead of being purely idealistic retreats. They also describe symbolic closing acts, leaving the central fire unbroken to return in 12 years, and holding a hummingbee ceremony linking this camp to a future rainbow gathering in Australia in 2000. The writers state that this camp is meant to be an example for future gatherings, to live respectfully within local customs while still sharing love, to learn from mistakes without blaming the culture around them, and to redefine freedom not as doing anything you want, but as finding ways to live your values without offending the people whose home you are in. This page explains that rainbow is not a fixed doctrine, but a practice of adapting to place, living in harmony with surroundings, and staying open to change, whether that means gathering in remote nature or closer to civilization, being naked in the river or covering up depending on context, and using the past as guidance without letting it harden into dogma. The text says the core message is, be here now, meaning that awareness of present conditions is itself the journey. It then shifts to lessons about how gatherings function. Participation and involvement are essential, and responsibilities need to be shared so everyone feels part of the whole. Daily talking circles after breakfast are described as the center of communication, where everyone can speak, understand what is happening, and place their energy where it is needed. The page calls for creating and maintaining smaller circles focused on specific aspects such as the kitchen or welcome center, starting at seed camp and continuing through cleanup, so newcomers can learn the process, gain confidence, and feel ownership. A strong welcome center and a daily newcomer circle are described as especially important for integrating new people and aligning them with what the camp is doing. The page places the India Rainbow Gathering in the same lineage as Rainbow in Africa, describing both as part of a deliberate effort to bring rainbow to third world countries and indigenous people, treating that effort as both a challenge and an opportunity to learn tribal ways. Finally, it says the Rainbow Giving Camp at Kumbha Mela closed a 3-year cycle of conscious rainbow presence in India, brought together people from over 40 countries, and acted as a mini-world gathering that affirmed the shared commitment to a universal rainbow family and planted the seed for a world gathering in Australia in 2000. Placed between reflections on rainbow gatherings as living, adaptive practices, and a meditation on the sacred flow of the Ganga, this illustrated page by Gustavo Teixeira serves as a visual invocation, linking those teachings to a cosmic, spiritual continuum. The image shows a human head rooted in the earth, from which a living vine grows upward into celestial realms, joining sun and moon through swirling organic patterns. The entire border repeats the Sanskrit mantra, Om Aim Saraswate Namaha, an invocation of the goddess Saraswati, patron of wisdom, speech, and creativity. In the context of the surrounding text, the drawing acts as a bridge. It transforms the practical communal lessons of the previous page into a symbolic vision of unity between human consciousness, natural cycles, and divine intelligence, while anticipating the next page's theme of flowing energy and transmission through water. Together, these 3 pages express an integrated philosophy of rainbow life, where awareness, nature, and spirit interweave in continuous exchange, celebrating both grounded action and transcendence. This page describes how the Rainbow Group lived on an island in the middle of the Ganga during Kumbha Mela, aligning themselves to the river's rhythm, sleeping, working, washing without soap, swimming with fish and frogs, drinking the water, and cooking with it, believing that the water carried their energy. It reflects on the idea that water has memory, so as they bathed and sweated in the Ganga, their message of peace and love spread into the river, and then outward, as the water flowed downstream from the Himalayas through Haridwar to the sea and beyond. The text imagines that some of this same water will travel the world, reach future rainbow gatherings, rise into clouds and fall again as rain, or remain in India within the people who were changed by it, silently transmitting the spirit of the Indian rainbow. It ends with a metaphor. Just as toxins become more dangerous as they move through the food chain, love carried in the rainbow water becomes stronger as it moves through more and more loving people, growing in confidence and spreading instead of poison. This page is a hymn to the Ganges, called Ganga Ma, written from the point of view of rainbow participants walking together to the river and treating it as a living mother. The text describes them arriving hand in hand, crossing sand and rocks, passing symbols like Trishul and lotus, and gathering at the water with candles, breath, and intention. It frames bathing in the Ganga as both purification and unity, saying, all waters are one, all people together, and asking that Mother Ganga flow on forever. The photograph beneath the text shows two women standing waist-deep in the river, one with hands pressed in prayer and eyes closed, the other washing her face, reinforcing that this is not tourism. It presents their immersion in the Ganga as direct devotion and alignment with a sacred source. This page captures the night ritual that completes the relationship between the rainbow family and the Ganga in India. A line of people standing thigh-deep in the river under a full moon, each holding a small flame cupped in both hands, dressed in white or light cloth that clings wet against their bodies. The image shows them not performing outward but offering inward, facing slightly toward one another and slightly toward the water, as if in witness. Reflected moonlight and candlelight merge on the surface around their legs, so the river itself seems to hold the light they brought. This is the moment implied in the earlier writings about puja, vision council, and releasing clay lamps downstream, the act of stepping physically into the current together and making the river the circle, instead of drawing a circle on land. In the context of rainbow in India, this night scene reads as both gratitude and declaration. We came as guests, we stood in the mother water, we asked for permission to carry something away from here, and we promised to carry it. This page describes a full moon ceremony at the Kumbha Mela, where the rainbow group moves together from communal meditation into shared ritual. As sunset falls around the main fire, everyone sits in silence, then forms a double food circle, smiling and eating dinner with bowls in hand, each person also receiving a small clay dish to be used later in a river offering. After eating, the group spirals into song and joins hands, then walks by candlelight to the Ganga, honoring the river as sacred, life-giving, and powerful. Under the rising moon, which turns the water silver, they wade across the warm, shallow river to a small sand island containing a sacred fire and an Om sculpture. Accompanied by didgeridoo and voices singing praises to the earth, about 250 people stand in a wide circle, and each lights their puja flame, offering dreams and prayers to the Mother Ganga. They then set the flames afloat on the current toward Haridwar and beyond, with the moment described as peaceful, graceful, and deeply shared, a feeling of true family. This page documents a vivid street procession and river ritual by rainbow people during Kumbha Mela. A group of barefoot, foreign-looking participants moves loudly and freely through Haridwar's main bazaar carrying drums, staffs, cloth, and a hand-painted rainbow flag, described as a sudden rush of light breaking the sleepy afternoon. The text narrates how a wave of orange fabric and bodies split to reveal painted faces, laughter, feathers, flowers, and song, like a serpent spiraling into fire, drawing crowds who watched in disbelief. As sunset came, they formed a circle on the riverbank, offering full energy, then leapt together into the Ganga holding hands. In the end, the rainbows from our foreheads washed into the river, suggesting both face paint and a symbolic merging with the sacred water. This page collects short first-person lines from different people at the rainbow gathering in Kumbha Mela, presented as a shared emotional record of the experience, describing personal happiness, unity, lack of privacy, recognition, and the intensity of living communally. The voices emphasize love for rainbow people, the feeling of finding family among those who breathe the same smoke, and the sense that coming together in one place dissolves isolation and turns cultural exchange into direct practice. Several lines describe spiritual awakening through Ganga worship, puja fires, mantra, trance dancing, Shiva devotion, and the search for inner peace, shanti, while others speak practically about chapati, dal, and flowing river water, or humorously about weed, marijuana, skull-shaped mugs, and the fire of consciousness. Many contributors frame the gathering as the most powerful emotional moment of their lives, where beauty, support, self-discovery, and acceptance all peak at once, and they describe it as both coming home and continuing a journey to live the life you love. At the bottom, a 3-panel comic shows a figure arriving and being welcomed to the family, preparing to meet again at another rainbow, and ends with the blessing, "May all beings be happy." This page explains awareness as a core lesson from the rainbow family's participation in the Kumbha Mela gathering in India. describing how people from different cultures living together closely became conscious of their impact on each other and on the environment, and how that awareness created a shared sense of safety. It says that awareness means taking responsibility for one's actions, instead of blaming others, noticing local norms, and respecting sacred practices and practical rules, such as not throwing cigarette butts in a sacred fire, washing with ash or sand instead of soap in the river, and understanding modesty expectations around women's clothing. It emphasizes that cultural differences are not necessarily oppression, but often rooted in tradition and meaning, and that rules sometimes exist simply to remind people to pay attention. The text argues that this kind of mutual learning does not happen instantly, but gatherings like Rainbow in India accelerate it by forcing people to interact, listen, and care for one another, showing that people are same but different. It concludes that Rainbow depends on a balance of giving and receiving wisdom, that everyone is part of one whole, and that like the parable of the blind man and the elephant, each person only touches part of the truth, so growth comes from sharing what we each have learned. This page is a hand-drawn, collage-style set of poems, chants, and playful mini-stories from a hippie/communal counterculture viewpoint, centered on Kumbha Mela and Rainbow, describing life in a temporary communal gathering where people work, sing, swim, hug, heal, clean, cook, and build shared camp and trust together. It celebrates brotherhood and sisterhood, giving instead of taking, and the feeling that living together closely brings inspiration, music, and a sense of spiritual purpose. Around that core are additional voices and sketches that repeat the same ideals in different tones. Invocations of universal love, peace, nature, and harmony. A walk toward a world without fear, violence, or death. A wish to leave behind thorns and anger and instead grow flowers, butterflies, and gentleness. A comic chant about how many rainbows does it take to change a light bulb, which turns into let's sit in a circle and talk about it, suggesting consensus and nonviolence. Mythic or magical imagery like fairies dancing under the moon and spellcasting that represents feminine power and Visually, the page mixes naked or semi-naked figures, androgynous bodies, long hair, beads, swirling patterns, rainbows, stars, flowers, butterflies, and hand-lettered slogans such as "May all beings be happy," producing an overall message of utopian communal living, sexual openness, ecological awareness, anti-fear, and shared spiritual awakening. This page blends report, humor, and spiritual framing. The top section is a vivid first-person description of rainbow people at the 1998 Kumbha Mela in India, portrayed as overwhelming, chaotic, sacred, filthy, ecstatic, and vast. Millions of pilgrims, holy men, dust, mantras, fires, chai, seed camp, food circles, talking stick, and non-stop workshops, alongside Western travelers, police, seekers, and zoned-out people in the mud. It describes the Mela as both purification and madness, with rainbow participants swept into an intense 24-hour collision of devotion, spectacle, exhaustion, diarrhea, and divine contact, ending with, "Welcome home." The middle section, Rainbow Alphabet, is a glossary of rainbow slang terms, such as Aicha, a yes-understanding greeting, consensus, everyone compromising after hours in the sun, focus, getting everyone to shut up and listen, GOM, Passad, quality not quantity, and welcome home, plus jokes about things like greasy sweets, late-night food circles, and endlessly repeated spiritual phrases, presented as affectionate self-parody of rainbow culture. The final section, Rainbow Eye, is a message from someone calling themselves INDIANMIND, describing rainbow as a gathering of souls in many colors, whose shared compassion, courage, and refusal to give up on love can bring light into a rainbow, heal humanity, break through illusion, and carry joy across cultures. It frames rainbow as a living spiritual transmission, bringing people out of isolation, honoring wisdom from India and elsewhere, and trusting that through shared service and awareness, the result will be happiness, harmony, and a brighter future. This page is about the role of music and group singing in rainbow culture. It says that in many ancient traditions, music was understood as a creative, healing force that connected people to themselves, to each other, and to a peaceful state of being. But in modern industrial society, people have been taught to treat music as a product made by professionals rather than as something everyone can do. The text argues that every person has a voice, and that singing together creates harmony, unity, and a felt sense of oneness. It describes life itself as vibration and sound, and says that music works as a universal language between all beings, and will be essential for humanity's future because it can restore balance to both people and the planet. Within rainbow gatherings, singing circles and musical parades are described as central activities, meant to spread joy and reconnection in cities, villages, and nature alike. The page ends with a short chant with chords. Hallelu, hallelu. Kol haneshama te hallelujah, translated as all the souls sing praises to God, and includes a photo of a group playing guitars and drums, emphasizing collective participation over performance. This page is a handwritten collection of songs, mantras, and blessings used in rainbow circles, especially in India, showing how spiritual language and music function as shared ritual. The first part records Sanskrit-style chants honoring Shiva, the Guru, and divine consciousness, Om Namah Shivaya, Hara 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 Mahadevaya, along with rhythmic call and response lines like Alak Alak Bom, suggesting group repetition. Another section is addressed to Ganga Ma, invoking the Ganges as a mother figure and praising her with Jai Jai Ma. After the invocations, the text shifts into English prayers, asking that the love found in the gathering spread across the earth, that every soul feel grace, and that, quote, we all see the light within. This leads into a traditional wish for universal well-being, may all the beings in all the world be happy, and then into Salam Alaikum/Alaikum Salam, signaling respect for Muslim greetings alongside Hindu devotional language. Around and below is the phrase, Om Tat Sat, a classical formula meaning ultimate truth or divine reality, framed by a note that body and mind are the servers of the divine within the self, tying physical presence, voice, service, and unity together as one act. This page is a handwritten song or chant with simple chord markings. The lyrics call on elements of nature, wood, stone, feather, and bone, current of the ocean, river, sea, redwood tree, and howling of the wind, as sources of freedom, protection, and belonging, with repeated lines about angels singing in my soul. The middle section is an intimate refrain, asking someone loving and maternal, Amma, to take me away, hold the singer, and let them rest in safety, warmth, and sweetness. The final section shifts into a vision of escape from Babylon, describing a journey into magical mountains, where pictures and visions grow, waters and words of love flow, and a million rainbow colors shine in utopia. It ends by saying Babylon's lights fade into shadow, while a new, imaginative world, called Fantasia, begins to rise. The page is framed with black and white drawings of flowers and a sun, reinforcing a mood of nature, tenderness, and hopeful transformation. This page is a hand-drawn manifesto calling for the rainbow family, and all similar circles worldwide, to recognize themselves as one unified movement, and to act together with intention, not just gather in isolation. It says many circles are already happening around the world, and argues that now is the time to link them, because all the issues people care about, peace, earth healing, spiritual freedom, children's safety, ending exploitation, living in truth, are connected. It frames this work as a global paradigm shift in consciousness, in which people drop ego, act from love, and remember that they are part of one living whole. The text urges everyone to stand, bring their gifts, and live the vision instead of only talking about it, claiming that all the resources, energy, creativity, and knowledge needed to transform the world already exist within the extended Rainbow Network. It also emphasizes responsibility to children and future generations, describing a duty to protect, bless, and celebrate them as carriers of a new way of being on Earth. The page ends by insisting that the dream is real, that it can only happen if people act together as one rather than as separated personalities, and that this unity itself is the awakening. This page is a dense handwritten and illustrated call for unity, memory, and shared purpose within the Rainbow family, as it moves toward the World Gathering in Australia in 2000. It describes a collective dream of harmony between people and the earth, speaking of Rainbow Tribe children and Mother Earth as part of one living family, and urges everyone to act from love, creativity, and spiritual connection, rather than division, fear, or control. It says that all visions are ultimately one vision, and that the way forward is to live as if the dream is already here, caring for each other, honoring the feminine and the earth, celebrating abundance, and healing together instead of waiting for governments or systems to fix anything. It invites people to recognize themselves as already connected, and to begin practicing that unity now through shared ritual, song, daily cooperation, and responsibility to future generations. The page also proposes creating a, quote, family album of rainbow life by gathering photos and images from gatherings around the world and displaying them in a big tent at the 2000 Australia gathering, and it gives a mailing address in Mona Vale, Sydney, for people to send laminated photos and visual records of their tribes, places, and dreamings, with the goal of documenting and showing that the Rainbow Network is real, global, and growing. This page links personal reflection on the Rainbow Movement's purpose, with plans for upcoming transcontinental gatherings. The top section argues that Rainbow should move beyond temporary gatherings and individual experiences into sustained collective action, planting trees, feeding the hungry, supporting refugees, building permaculture communities, creating gardens where the earth needs healing, and standing for peace with integrity. It says the next step is to ground this vision in daily life and to make the World Gathering in Australia a catalyst for living Rainbow down to earth, offering an alternative way of being instead of returning to what it calls nuclear or semi-nuclear existence. The lower section announces a rainbow caravan across the Pacific, beginning with a rainbow gathering on Kyuhi Island, Japan, in September 1999, around the autumn equinox and full moon, described as a rainbow circus, with Zen monks, dragons, masks, fire shows, and rainbow Reiki connection, then continuing by sea from Japan to Australia via boats and yachts. It describes a mythic journey that includes joining an annual dolphin gathering by the Bermuda Triangle, contacting oceanic tribes, linking Hawaii, Papua New Guinea, and the Great Barrier Reef, and culminating in a unification of all creatures from earth, water, air, and fire at Australia 2000 to enter what is called Dreamtime. This page combines 3 short statements about the meaning and purpose of the rainbow movement. The first, One Rainbow Dreaming Story, is a poetic affirmation that within hardship, there is a path toward inner balance and shared love, and that through ritual, collective work, and mutual care, people can bring their wishes into reality. The simple vision states that the essential purpose of life is self-realization and liberation from suffering through personal growth. It describes rainbow as a family structure that supports each person's individual path rather than enforcing a single shared consciousness, and argues that true change begins with honest recognition of suffering and right effort carried out in love. The Rainbow Tribe frames rainbow gatherings as a modern expression of tribalism, saying that this global communion of people reflects and learns from indigenous traditions of harmony with nature, shared responsibility, and animistic belief that everything is alive. It claims that as rainbow communal living matures, it aims to embody those principles more fully and act as a catalyst for a unified way of living. This page is a historical planning flyer titled Israel 2000 Walks and Gatherings, laying out a proposed sequence of communal spiritual events around the turn of the millennium. It lists an Israeli gathering from the 1st to the 15th of November 1999, followed by a likely camp between Nazareth and the Galilee later that year, a December walk described as following the route of Mary and Joseph from Nazareth to Bethlehem through Christmas, and overland travel to Egypt by caravan, bus, or camel in late December. It then describes plans for a New Year's Eve gathering at the Giza Pyramids on the 31st of December, 1999 over 1 January 2000, a second gathering in the Egyptian desert soon after led by named focalizers, and a 40-day wandering in the Sinai in January to February 2000. The flyer continues with a March 2000 baptism event at the Jordan River, in reference to John the Baptist, Gnostic studies and a gathering at Qumran, a return to the Galilee site, and then a symbolic last walk of Jesus from Capernaum to Jerusalem that was intended to include a ritualized crucifixion on Good Friday and a resurrection observance in April 2000. After that, participants planned to fly to a large gathering in Australia in 2000. The lower portion notes future major Kumbha Mela gatherings in India through 2010 and includes a manifesto-style poem that declares every day to be Bob Marley Day, calls for mental freedom and refusal of imposed obligations such as war or compulsory service, and reframes the weekly calendar, Sunday through Shabbat, as continuous liberation. This page is presented as 2 connected statements. First, a message titled My Dear Family, which addresses the rainbow family worldwide as one extended family united by a commitment to truth, light, love, and practical example rather than doctrine, and calls for people not only to keep talking about rainbow values, but to live them publicly in all conditions, by creating and doing non-stop rainbow gatherings, sharing experience through circles, talking sticks, and mutual listening, and showing that peaceful cooperation is possible. It explains that the Rainbow Tribe began in 1972 in the United States, and second, a section called Rainbow School the Vision, which argues that most existing schools, including most alternative schools, reproduce a materialistic society focused on competition and money, rather than compassion, respect, living with nature, and spiritual development, and proposes a different model of education rooted in nature, autonomy, and direct experience. In this model, children would learn basic practical skills alongside massage, yoga, Reiki, natural law, astronomy, astrology, permaculture, and music, and would be raised to be independent and in balance with themselves and the earth. This vision is described as the Himalaya Rainbow School, a long-term dream seeking organizers, teachers, and families to help create it, with contact details in India and Germany provided for people who want to participate. This page proposes the creation of an Earth Tribes Federation, a decentralized global federation of self-governing communities, tribes, families, and cultural groups that feel unprotected or constrained by national governments, multinational corporations, and supranational bodies. It argues that the Earth, described as Mother Earth, is under threat environmentally, culturally, economically, and politically, and that people should be able to live according to their own values, economies, and social structures in protected sanctuaries outside certain state restrictions. The document outlines possible activities within such a federation, including land-based communities, permaculture villages, ecological protection projects, rainbow gatherings, alternative education, crafts, holistic health, and cooperative economies, and emphasizes the need for legally recognized zones where people can live in peace, autonomy, and cultural continuity. It calls for a long-term constitutional process built through direct consensus among tribes and families, respecting both traditional and new cultures, and asks practical questions about whether independent tribal communities could reclaim land, govern themselves without weapons, uphold nonviolence, assert rights like free assembly and expression, and eventually achieve recognition at the level of international bodies. The page concludes by inviting responses and input for a draft Maine Constitution to be developed at the Australian World Rainbow Gathering in 2000, positioning this federation as both a protection of endangered cultures and ecologies and a model for post-state global cooperation based on mutual respect, listening, and shared responsibility. This page combines two elements. The first is a spiritual and activist text urging readers to free yourselves, return to the earth, act from love, resist government, industry, and shadowy technology, and see themselves as part of a shared human destiny, described as unity, rebirth, and collective voice. The second is a report on prison conditions in India, focused on Tihar jail in Delhi, which is said to hold about 9,000 inmates, including roughly 1,000 foreigners, mainly 18 to 35-year-old Europeans and Africans, many of whom are accused only of possessing cannabis resin or small amounts of heroin. The text states that because legal proceedings are slow, people can spend 6 months to 3 years in pretrial detention under poor conditions before seeing a judge, and even then face additional delays in overcrowded courts. Many are held on police accusations alone and must keep appearing in court every few weeks without resolution. It describes how foreign detainees are pressured into paying large sums to lawyers with promises of quick release that often do not materialize, and it criticizes Indian drug law for imposing mandatory minimum prison terms of 10 years for possession regardless of context, and for allowing the death penalty for trafficking larger quantities. The writer argues that prohibition, not drugs themselves, creates the harm by driving a black market, raising prices, and criminalizing users, and calls for people abroad to send money, food, clothes, or legal help to support those detained and to oppose prohibition policy. This page sets out a worldview called rainbow dreaming, arguing that modern life is marked by environmental crisis, social separation, fear, and overconsumption, and calling for a shift toward unity, shared responsibility, and reconnection with nature. It describes rainbow as a vision of all people, cultures, and traditions coming together in mutual respect to create a new way of living that values simplicity, harmony, and direct human connection over violence, control, and excess. The author rejects rigid ideology and instead frames change as a process of returning to basic needs, listening to one another, and healing ourselves so that we can heal the earth. Nature is described as both teacher and model, showing that balance comes from gradual adaptation, cooperation between opposites, and continuous adjustment rather than domination. The page argues that human life and the life of the planet are intertwined parts of one organism. It also introduces Gaia as a living planetary being whose health depends on human awareness, shared stewardship, and the ability of people from different backgrounds to contribute knowledge, art, science, and activism to restore ecological balance and social harmony. The text concludes that this cultural shift is already underway and that the work is not to force a revolution, but to evolve. To join in a planetary process that recognizes oneness, honors diversity, and moves toward a future where humanity lives as part of Earth rather than above it. This page presents an argument for an optimum lifestyle based on living in natural surroundings, close to the land and to each other, rather than in industrial, crowded, chemically dependent environments. It describes an ideal, small, self-sufficient community, where decisions are made directly by the people involved rather than by distant authorities, where children learn practical skills and values from daily life rather than from institutional systems, and where material needs are met through sharing, permaculture, and low-impact subsistence rather than money. The text links this vision to a critique of overpopulation, which it describes as the driver of major historical shifts from tribal hunting and gathering to agriculture, then to centralized authority, mass production, and modern industrial life that damages nature and alienates people from land and from each other. It argues that with more people on Earth, cooperative and peaceful living becomes more difficult unless new approaches are developed, and identifies permaculture as one current way to use land efficiently and regenerate ecological balance. The final section, the Rainbow Experiment, frames the rainbow movement itself as a living test of alternatives, not a fixed model or dogma, but an evolving cultural experiment in new forms of community, mutual care, and ways of being that draw on many traditions and continuously adapt. It concludes that the goal is not perfection but learning, remembering origins, trusting love and light as guidance, and accepting that everyone involved is part of a shared process called rainbow dreaming. This page lays out a practical vision for turning rainbow ideals into action by spreading awareness, building alternatives, and living the values instead of only talking about them. It says change must start with individuals and describes several tools for doing that. Rainbow gatherings, which have taken place for more than 26 years, are presented as spaces where people meet in nature to share food, skills, healing, and responsibility in a non-hierarchical way, learn to live in harmony with each other and the land, and experience the rainbow vision directly. Talking circles and communal rituals are described as gifts for humanity that show equality and collective input. The text proposes creating permanent communities that live this way year-round, while also serving as places where visitors can experience it, and says the planned World Gathering in Australia in 2000 is a chance to share lessons from decades of intentional communal living. It also calls for peace circus caravans, traveling groups that bring music, joy, and communal example to people who may not otherwise see alternatives, especially those described as trapped in mainstream systems, and for singing circles, since music and group singing are described as healing and unifying. The page encourages bringing rainbow culture into festivals through workshops, teepees, chai shops, and shared songs in order to reach younger people, and it frames living with indigenous people as a way to act as a respectful bridge, learn tribal knowledge, and help communities endure rapid change caused by Western influence. It argues that the written word, including this magazine, can carry these ideas widely, even if it cannot replace lived experience. The closing hapologue states that the rainbow vision is an evolving process, rather than a finished model, that it rejects rigid doctrine, and aims to reconnect humanity to beauty, peace, and oneness, and that everyone is part of the same circle with a shared task, to act together, create together, and rise on our journey into the rainbow. This page reads like a record of the rainbow family moving through India as both procession and offering. The top photograph shows a line of rainbow walkers traveling along a rough riverbank path, barefoot or in worn boots, draped in shawls and saris and patched clothes, carrying staffs and banners. There is no stage, no separation. It looks like pilgrimage rather than spectacle. The feeling is that they are carrying themselves and their experiment from one space to another, from camp to river, from forest island to town, from private circle to public ritual, as if the walk itself is part of the ceremony. This is rainbow in India, as a moving body, not rooted yet, but insisting on being physically present inside the landscape instead of staying in the tourist margins. The bottom photograph shifts from motion to encounter. A row of rainbow people stand shoulder to shoulder, arms linked, faces painted or marked with tilak, wrapped in cloth more Indian than Western, while a crowd of Indian men stands close behind and around them, watching. No one looks alarmed. The mood is alert, curious, charged. You can feel the negotiation of gaze. The rainbow line presents unity and devotion, almost like a single organism, and the local crowd surrounds them, not pushing them out, but reading them, measuring them. This picture is the moment where "we brought our culture here" begins to turn into "we are being seen by theirs," which was the core question of rainbow at the Kumbha Mela. Can a self-declared family with no guru, no hierarchy, and no fixed nationality stand inside one of the largest, oldest religious gatherings on earth and be recognized not as intruders or clowns, but as sincere beings in prayer? This page can be read as a visual statement of what the rainbow family was attempting in India during Kumbha Mela, to introduce a culture of open circle, shared attention, and direct human connection in the middle of a massive religious environment. The top photograph shows a large ring of Indian onlookers gathered along the Ganges, watching a smaller group of rainbow participants who are drumming, dancing, moving, and holding a handmade banner in the cleared center of that public space. It documents how the rainbow circle, which inside the camp is meant for consensus, prayer, song, and feeding, became in India a public interface, a porous ritual border in which visiting Westerners and local pilgrims faced one another and tried to establish contact without translation, using movement instead of negotiation. The lower photograph shifts the scale from crowd to body, two people's hands linked in the foreground, the rest of the circle soft behind them. This second image captures how rainbow represents itself to itself, through physical joining and mutual recognition, and shows the essential claim of the experiment in India, that a temporary community with no guru and no central authority can offer a model of people standing in a ring, visible to one another, with their hands connected and their attention directed to a shared center. Read together, the images hold the tension at the heart of rainbow in India, the outer ring of observers around a few foreign bodies at the river, and the inner ring of linked hands inside the camp, both describing the same intention, to create a human circle that could be seen, understood, and possibly trusted. This page is a call to action framed as both a spiritual invitation and a practical update. It urges all lovers of being, especially healers of every tradition and technique, to develop, purify, and share their skills in service of others, and to gather in Australia in the year 2000 at the dawn of the new millennium, described as a rare chance to reach thousands or even millions of people in need of love and healing, to open for the light, and to spread knowledge across the earth. Below that, the page shifts into an informal note from a magazine circle meeting on a Friday night in Delhi, saying it is extremely hot, the group is drinking chai and finishing work on what they call the magic zine, and they are about to send it to the printer. They describe the process as a vision coming true and an amazing experience, and they emphasize that the magazine space is open to everyone's inspiration and energy as a shared channel for rainbow voices. The page closes with contact details under the name Rainbow Rising, and the overall tone blends playful communal self-awareness, reinforced by a cartoon of a chaotic editorial circle, with a sense of global mission leading toward Australia 2000. This page is a hand-drawn children's story and poem about the origin of color and imagination. It begins in a world of pure light with no color, where children and trees grow bored because everything looks the same and nothing can be painted, until three butterflies, red, yellow, and blue, decide to create Dreamtime magic. The butterflies emerge from the dark forest, glowing with bright light, and as they fly around the children and through the trees, they scatter sparkling dust that turns everything they touch into color, making apples red, flowers yellow, and the world joyful. When a little girl smiles at them, the colors begin to mix, first forming orange, then green, then purple, and together the butterflies create a rainbow that circles the whole world, making even the seas and skies smile. Alongside the main story, the page includes an illustrated teepee with a sleeping figure, sketches of butterflies, animals, suns, and children, and a poem about a mystical island where butterfly people live in harmony and invite visitors to join them in music, rhythm, and wandering, suggesting that color, wonder, and freedom still exist for anyone willing to seek them. This page is presented in a child's voice and artwork, framing the Rainbow Camp through the eyes of an 11-year-old named Yasmin. She says her favorite part of Rainbow at the Kumbha Mela was the parade, which made her feel very happy, and she especially liked that there was a children's kitchen that sometimes cooked just for the kids. She enjoyed learning new things in an acrobatics workshop, and she says that the music and songs she learned made her very happy, repeating happiness as the emotional center of her experience. The page also includes a hand-drawn word search, whose word list reflects key rainbow ideas such as healing, freedom, love, giving, family, circle, magic hat, consensus, harmony, welcome home, and Kumbha Mela, and a drawing labeled Rainbow Baba, showing a figure in a devotional or ceremonial pose. Altogether, it shows that the Rainbow Camp was not just an experiment in alternative community for adults, it was also built to include and uplift children, teach them, feed them, and let them participate in ritual, song, and play. This page explains how the Rainbow Kitchen works as a collective effort, where everyone participates to cook healthy, love-filled food, and emphasizes that the energy and attitude people bring to cooking matters as much as the ingredients. It opens with a playful basic rainbow recipe, calling for love, peace, harmony, and at least one musician, and says that flexibility and creativity are essential because cooking is done for about 100 people at a time. The page then gives practical large quantity recipes: chapati made from flour, water, and salt, mixed and shaped by hand, flattened, dusted with flour, and cooked over an open fire, and baba ganoush made by fire, roasting whole eggplants until soft, peeling and salting them to drain liquid, then mashing them with tahini, garlic, lemon juice, salt, and pepper into a creamy spread. Between those recipes, the page also urges groups to include raw food with every meal, grow sprouts, and eat fresh salads, saying, "If you are what you eat, be a peach," combining nutrition advice with the rainbow ideal of food as shared life energy. This page combines kitchen guidance and communal philosophy from rainbow culture. It shares recipes for feeding a large camp: a homemade potato gnocchi with tomato sauce made from mashed potato, flour, milk, and boiled dumplings, served with a long-simmered sauce of tomatoes, onion, garlic, herbs, and spices. A chai recipe that treats chai making as meditation and calls for water, ginger, cloves, cardamom, milk, cinnamon, black tea, sugar, and optional spices like nutmeg and vanilla, simmered and brought to the boil 3 times before straining. And date coffee, made by roasting and grinding date seeds with sugar and spices such as nutmeg and cinnamon. Alongside the recipes, the page explains the Rainbow Kitchen model. Cooking is done collectively and in a circle, with 2 or 3 focalizers managing supplies and menus, and others taking turns serving, so that food, energy, and responsibility are shared. The page ends with an appeal to bring good energy to the food circle, share work in harmony, and spread positive vibrations through love, light, and peace. This page is a hand-drawn astrological and lunar calendar for 1998, arranged in a circular or radial layout that tracks moon phases, zodiac positions, and key solar events. It marks the new moon, first quarter moon, full moon, and last quarter moon with dates and times, alongside the zodiac sign the moon is in at those moments. And it notes that all times are given in Greenwich Mean Time, with adjustments for Eastern Standard and New Zealand Time in certain months. The outer bands label the months from January through December, and the inner spokes list specific dates, times, and astrological signs for each phase of the moon throughout the year. The calendar also highlights solstices and equinoxes under solar rhythms, includes references to Ekadashi, and features visual motifs of stars, planets, and crescent moons around the border, blending practical timing information with symbolic cosmic imagery. This page reports on 2 recent rainbow gatherings. The first section describes New Zealand's first national rainbow gathering, held in Baton Valley on the South Island near Kahurangi National Park. The event began with a seed camp of 23 people and reached about 150 people at the full moon. It took place on private pasture near native forest, with a river running through the site, and included shared use of the land with cattle. Strong winds damaged teepees and kitchen shelters, which were then rebuilt in time for the full gathering. The kitchen produced nearly all organic food, and nights were cold, but generally the weather was acceptable. The gathering is described as small but culturally important. Visitors from overseas brought skills, local musicians joined for a full moon ceremony, and local farmers were supportive. The account links the gathering to the Waitaha, described as a peaceful pre-Maori people whose story is said to be re-emerging, and frames the gathering as the start of a longer process, with the next national gathering planned for November/December 1998 in Northland. The second section describes the first rainbow gathering in the Canary Islands in October 1997, held near Caldera in the Green Mountains of La Palma at about 700 meters elevation. Around 60 to 100 people camped for 2 weeks, and around 150 were present on the full moon. The group focused on sharing food, music, and meditation, and expressed a plan to hold future gatherings every year across the 7 Canary Islands, thanking the local La Palma community for organizing. This page places the European rainbow gatherings of 1997 as living proof of a mobile, transnational family that was already practicing the culture it later carried into India. The first photo, labeled Scotland, June 1997, shows a tight group hug in an open, windswept field, people in layered wool and hats holding each other with obvious familiarity, while others drift in the background under a handheld flag. It documents how rainbow in Europe often takes place in remote land, with people forming bonds strong enough to feel like kin rather than strangers. The second photo, Greece, August 1997, shows a small forest encampment, canvas shelters and poles behind the circle, and jugglers tossing clubs in the air while others sit and watch, which reflects how rainbow gatherings in Europe operate as temporary autonomous villages with shared skill, shared play, and shared attention, not as festivals with spectators and performers. Read together. These images present rainbow in Europe as a traveling organism that changes landscapes, but keeps the same core structure of mutual care, uncommercial exchange, and open ritual space. The dates suggest a seasonal rhythm, Scotland in early summer, Greece in late summer, and a continuity that helps explain how, by early 1998 in India, there was already a practiced model of circle culture, collective kitchens, and improvised ceremony. The page can be read as a bridge, Europe in 1997, feeding into Haridwar in 1998, through bodies that had already learned how to cook together, build together, entertain each other, and hold emotional warmth in harsh terrain, so that what arrived in the Kumbha Mela was not tourism, but a form of communal life that had been tested from the highlands to the Mediterranean. This page recounts how an alternative communal experiment unfolded in Butterfly Valley on the Mediterranean coast of southern Turkey, where visiting travelers formed a temporary tribe that rejected money, alcohol, and commercial tourism, and instead practiced shared living, circle gatherings, music, prayer, sweat lodges, yoga, communal baking, and ideas for long-term projects such as an eco-village or rainbow community. This outside tribe's presence challenged and sometimes angered local people, some of whom had been earning income from tourists, but it also inspired talk about land belonging to Mama Earth, cooperation without hierarchy, and staying in the valley to live simply and farm. After weeks of songs, rituals, and collective dreaming, a fire destroyed the group's main tent. A baby escaped unharmed, which the group interpreted as closure, and soon after the visitors left the valley and moved into the mountains, forming new ties with local people. The writer says that although there are now no rainbow people living in Butterfly Valley, the seed of a communal, non-commercial way of life remains there and could grow if it is cared for, and that the rainbow spirit in Turkey continues in Istanbul through gatherings, music, and community around Taksim. The page closes by stressing that Butterfly Valley is protected land that cannot be built on, and offering wishes for peace, love, and the creation of new community in Turkey. This page describes the origins and ongoing activity of the rainbow movement in Israel, beginning with a 1992 caravan of 35 people who drove from Amsterdam to Israel with the goal of creating the first rainbow gathering outside the USA and Europe and bringing rainbow consciousness to Israel and the Middle East. About 250 people met in the desert for 2 weeks, held powerful circles, and felt that a new tribe was born. Since then, annual gatherings have taken place each October or November, along with smaller events such as Shabbat circles, teepee communities, traveling circus visits to Arab villages, and a theater group, and the first Rainbow Healing Retreat emerged from the Third Israel Gathering in 1994. The text says hundreds of people from around the world have joined over the years, that Israel is now seen as a strong point of light in the global rainbow network, and that the current main goal is to establish a permanent rainbow community in Israel despite the ongoing challenge of finding land. The rest of the page begins a narrative from the November 1997 gathering in the Israeli desert, noting that the site, inside an army firing zone, was still considered an upgrade from an earlier camp that had been forced into a public car park, and recalling chaotic and colorful scenes. A fully functioning welcome center, pits being dug, frantic energy, and a dramatic chai shop saga in which one chai seller lost his license after being caught washing clothes in the drinking water, leading to a stricter chai shop run by someone named Sunbird. This page is a first-person recollection of a rainbow gathering, told with humor and light sarcasm, starting with a dialogue about different chai pots named Gaia and Pan, and a playful explanation that the true ingredients are wishes, dreams, visions, laughter, and love. The narrator describes arriving late to a global water carrier initiation, where participants were meant to sip a drop of sacred water collected from 1,008 places worldwide, only to watch an overexcited Israeli drink the entire bottle in one gulp. The story then shifts to camp life and the constant appearance of themed circles such as Magic Mushroom Chai Circle, Rainbow Disease Workshop, and Warrior Circles, and describes long talking circles where people passed a stick and tried to plan for emergencies while in practice nothing functional happened, even as food circles stopped working. A sudden storm then turned what had been assumed to be a dry riverbed into a flash flood, forcing everyone to panic, grab their tents and clothes, and run half-naked through the rising water, while belongings and even motorbikes washed away downstream. Afterward, the group responded not with anger but with shared laughter, drumming through the night, singing rainbow songs, joking about each other's static hair, and celebrating under a full moon, improvising around the fact that no one had cooked enough food, and ending with the narrator signing off love and laughter until next year. This page describes the origins and meaning of the Rainbow Gathering movement in southern Africa, presenting it as a response to both the long pre-colonial history of tribal coexistence and the violence of colonization and apartheid, which dismantled many peoples and cultures until apartheid was formally ended, and South Africa began calling itself a rainbow nation. It recounts the first rainbow gathering in South Africa in December 1997, prepared over 6 months, and attended by about 100 people of all ages from across South Africa and Europe, both black and white, who met in a remote valley near Knysna. Participants shared songs, visions, and experiences, practiced living together as one family, and grounded themselves in 4 elements, with the gathering portrayed as well-organized, inclusive, and spiritually strong. A vision circle at that gathering agreed to continue and fixed dates for the next meeting, the 1st to the 15th of June 1998 in the Transkei, noting that holding gatherings in tribal areas is challenging but essential to the African Rainbow Vision, which emphasizes building direct relationships with indigenous people, learning their skills and ways of living on the land, and better understanding themselves as a rainbow tribe under the call, "Let's Go Tribal," expressed as "One Love, One Heart." This page describes the development of the rainbow family in Australia, beginning with the first national rainbow gathering at Shalom in 1996, which drew a strong community from the north coast of New South Wales known for forest-based, self-sufficient living. It states that although this was called the first official rainbow gathering in 30 years, rainbow consciousness was already established in Australia's alternative communities, especially in practices such as permaculture, alternative power, schooling, and lifestyle. The page outlines several national gatherings: Mary Farms in North Queensland, described as tropical and spread across forests, beaches, and mango country; Victoria in the alpine forests near the New South Wales border, described as energized and smooth; and a planned national gathering in Tasmania in January to February 1999, presented as a place with an old, established tribe. The page says Australia contains many tribes who live seasonally by moving north in the cold months and south in the hot months, with a pattern of nomadic movement between semi-permanent bases focused on self-sufficiency and harmony with nature. It also presents the national gatherings as times of exchange between many colors, meaning local groups that each carry their own energy, but together form a larger whole. The page argues that Australia has space for these groups to grow, that energy levels in Australia are rising, while suitable land elsewhere in the world is getting harder to find, and that people who come often stay. The page ends by framing the planned World Rainbow Gathering in Australia in 2000, not only as an event, but as an invitation for the global world tribe to help make the rainbow dream real in Australia. This page explains that one of the goals emerging from a rainbow gathering is to move ideals into practical action by caring for the earth through permaculture, described as permanent sustainable agriculture, a term associated with Australian designer Bill Mollison. Permaculture is presented as an alternative to monoculture farming and as a way of living in balance by observing how nature works in each specific place, acting from care rather than profit, and creating systems that maintain themselves. Several core principles are outlined. Local is best. Use locally available materials, eat local seasonal food, and build with what the immediate environment provides. Diversity. Natural systems are healthy because they mix many living things that support each other, rather than relying on a single crop or bare soil, and humans should encourage that variety so that relationships among plants, trees, insects, and animals stay in balance. Cycles. Nature moves in cycles and spirals rather than straight lines, and people need to reconnect to those cycles to restore balance in their own lives and on the planet. Recycling. Most things can be reused and repurposed, and organic material can be composted instead of discarded. Less is more. Simplify life. Focus on what is actually needed instead of accumulating excess, and rely on nature's abundance by growing food, medicine, building materials, and herbs, then sharing those resources within a community. The page concludes that living this way affirms both independence and connection by recognizing that humans are part of the earth, and the earth is part of humans. This page describes the origin and purpose of rainbow healing retreats, which emerged from the Third Israeli Rainbow Gathering in 1994 after Gabi Rainbow observed that gatherings had become chaotic, overstimulating, and linked to heavy use of coffee, chai, tobacco, sweets, and conversation, leading to stress and illness. A trial retreat brought about 50 people together in a calm space with healthy food, abstinence from addictive substances, and an expectation not to leave camp. Many participants felt renewed, but there was also emotional turmoil and anger expressed between people. In 1997, the Greek retreat added 5 days of silence to encourage people to recognize that their anger and problems came from within, making the camp quieter and more reflective. And later that year, the Israel retreat introduced 2 daily meditations practiced together in silence, which was considered especially effective. The current approach in India is described as an intensified version that includes 7 days of silence, 4 daily meditations, and suspending activities such as reading and writing to avoid distraction. Each retreat is organized by a talking circle, and once guidelines are set, everyone is expected to respect them and commit to the schedule, which typically includes group meditation at dawn, self-practice such as yoga or tai chi, breakfast, morning meditation, walking meditation, a final meal at lunch, afternoon meditation, sunset meditation, and evening group readings or teachings, with optional workshops during the day. The stated intention is to promote individual growth and encourage other rainbow families to include healing retreats in their event calendars. This page argues that most remaining indigenous tribes are losing their traditions, experiencing cultural genocide, illness, and disruption after contact with Western society, and that their practical knowledge of nature, survival, bush food, bush medicine, song, dance, and ritual is rapidly disappearing. It says that before agriculture, humans lived as hunter-gatherer tribes, and that this tribal knowledge still exists within people today, which is why some countercultural groups call themselves a rainbow tribe. It proposes that by living with indigenous communities, outsiders can learn about sharing, survival, responsibility, and living in the present, and can help build a new culture rooted in direct relationship with land. The page frames this as both a duty and an urgent opportunity. It calls on readers to go live with indigenous people, offer emotional support amid rapid and painful change, and help them maintain their culture, describing this role as acting like a rainbow bridge. It ends by urging immediate action, saying that in some cases permission is needed to visit indigenous land, and in other cases it is not, and encouraging readers to go tribal. This page argues for the unity of humanity by describing a repeated gesture of respect, offering something with the right hand while the left hand touches the right elbow, observed in India among sadhus, in northern Australia among Aboriginal people, and in parts of Africa, and treating this as evidence of shared origin rather than isolated custom. The text states that similar patterns across traditional cultures, such as circumcision, initiation rites, bone ornaments through the nose, fire-making with sticks, matted hair, and body decoration point to a common human ancestry rather than separate development. It suggests that sadhus in India may have once protected tribal shamanism against expanding civilization thousands of years ago, and that similarities between indigenous Australians, Papuans, and some African groups show cultural continuity rather than division. The page concludes that these parallels reveal one people, one love, one destiny, and includes a sketch titled The Origin of Written Language, presenting examples of Aboriginal symbols such as signs for a waterhole, emu tracks, shrub, two snakes, a sleeping person, kangaroo tracks moving fast or slowly, and creeks. This page is a schedule of upcoming rainbow gatherings around the world from mid-1998 through the year 2000, showing how the Rainbow Network operates as a global, continuous caravan rather than a single event. It lists regional and national gatherings with dates, locations, and contact people, moving month by month. June 1998 gatherings in South Africa, France, and India, Ladakh. England in late June alongside Glastonbury. The United States, Arizona in early July. Russia in late July-August, tied to the 16th All-European Gathering, a Scandinavian ting in Finland from late July to early August, and a healing retreat in France in September. It then notes possible full moon gatherings in Turkey and Israel in October 1998, a possible New Zealand gathering in Northlands in November 1998, a national rainbow gathering in Tasmania, Australia in early February 1999, with a seed camp starting around New Year, and finally the stated goal, a world rainbow gathering in Australia in the year 2000. The list reads like an informal migration map, with phone numbers and names instead of institutions, and it frames Rainbow not as an isolated camp in India, but as one node in a traveling, self-organized border-crossing family that is already planning its next convergence. This page is a contact directory titled Rainbow Connections, describing focalizing as a form of communication and coordination within the rainbow community, aimed at sharing information, linking regional groups, and helping organize gatherings such as rainbow caravans, and, specifically, a future gathering in Australia in 2000. It presents an international list of active focalizer addresses, giving names, postal addresses, telephone and fax numbers, and in some cases, email contacts for individuals and small groups across multiple countries and regions, including Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Hungary, India, Israel, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Russia, and others. The stated goal is to maintain and expand a functional, updated focalizer network to improve communication between local, regional, national, and international rainbow circles. This page is a global directory of rainbow gathering contacts, followed by a catalog of rainbow-related intentional communities. The first section lists names, phone numbers, postal addresses, and some email addresses for regional contacts across Russia, Slovenia, South Africa, Spain, the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, the Netherlands, Israel, and Australia, including references to local rainbow circles and projects. The second section, titled Rainbow Projects and Villages, describes specific communal living projects and eco-settlements in various countries, outlining their living conditions, values, and needs. These descriptions include details such as whether there is shared land or land for sale, whether electricity is available, expectations around music, healing, or service, seasonal rhythms, invitations to help grow food or develop infrastructure, and notes on lifestyle, for example, simple living, vegetarian diet, no hard drugs, or self-sufficiency. Several listings also state contact persons, village structures, and requests for participation, donations, or presence at gatherings, framing a transnational network of rainbow-linked eco-villages, peace camps, and self-sustaining rural communities. The page discusses an early proposal for a World Rainbow Gathering planned for Australia in the year 2000, presented as an evolving collective project rather than a fixed event. It describes the aim to create a self-sustaining long-term gathering based on permaculture, fresh food, and the use of natural materials, beginning with a seed camp around New Year's Eve 1999 and continuing for several months to build gardens and essential infrastructure. It notes that scouting work was planned to start in February 1999, that the preferred location is somewhere fertile, practical to access, and suitable for families, and that logistics such as water, transport, and heat must be considered. The page states that those organizing the proposal want to respectfully acknowledge Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of the land, invite Indigenous people and others from around the world to participate, and support cultural exchange. It emphasizes that all dates and plans are still open, that no final decisions have been made, and that feedback is being requested from people internationally so decisions can be made collectively. It also describes the intention to form an international coordination circle, referred to as focalizers, to help organize communication and planning across different regions. The back cover is written as an open invitation to a World Rainbow Gathering planned for Australia in 2000, and describes the gathering as a collective, global meeting at the start of the new millennium to live in a more connected, responsible, and earth-centered way. It calls on the Rainbow family to come together in Australia to join hearts and hands, plant and grow seeds of care, and develop a shared vision for the future by learning from the past. It speaks about celebrating the now, stating that in recent years the rainbow movement has grown and that new circles have formed in many parts of the world, and it encourages all participants to bring their abilities and work together to establish a lasting way of living. It says that the time has come to recognize the unity of all people, to heal both ourselves and the earth, to act according to stated values, and to reconnect with what it describes as the truth of living in love. It ends by saying that a seed for this vision already exists, that now is the time to care for it and help it grow, and that people are invited to gather, stay present, and carry this vision forward together.